Half-Life 2 is incredible, but you don't need me to say that. If you know anything about this industry, everyone knows of the influence Valve has over it. From Steam, to the Half-Life, to the Portal series, to loot boxes, to crates, to oh my god, no! But digital games and digital media truly got its start back in 2004 when Valve first released Steam. Steam has become a hub for gamers and game developers across the globe. Whether you're small indie developers hoping to release their first title like Undertale, or you're just a small guy making a cute little Bejeweled game. I don't see anything wrong with it. Oh my god! I grew up in a Mac family. So, for the most part, PC gaming was completely off the table for me. If it wasn't Sid Meier's or Jumpstart 3rd grade, I wasn't playing it. But that all changed when Valve, over the course of 2009 and into 2010, started releasing a lot of their software onto Mac operating systems. One of the most influential trailers they released during this time being the TF2 comes to Mac. But you already know this, I'm sure. So why am I making this video? Because I just watched the documentary over the creation of Half-Life 2 for its 20th year anniversary, and it definitely not only inspired me, but it took me back. But now, I want to take you guys back to the distant year of 2010. Put on your acid-wash jeans, prop your collars, because we're going on a journey. The year, 2010. The time, summer, and I was chilling in my parents' basement getting ready to watch the most life-changing event of my life. E3. Guys, I miss E3. I'm sure most of y'all remember, but for anyone who wasn't aware, E3 was truly the biggest time of the year for any gamer on the block. It was video game Santa coming down the video game chimney, dropping off video game goodies and goodits that we were gonna get down the line. Although starting was just a very by-the-numbers industry press conference, you could see the seeds of the spectacle that E3 was slowly gonna grow into as far back as 1995, when Sony dropped the $299 bomb in response to Sega Saturn's pricing.
$299.
But from that moment on, E3 began to grow, and it became a moment, not just for journalists, not just for people in the business, but for gamers around the world. E3 became a spectacle. You just don't get events like this anymore, man. You don't have Nintendo awkwardly doing their demos on stage anymore, no. You don't have Kevin Butler and Sean Layden coming out and lighting our hearts and smiles. Remember when Sean Layden announced Crash Bandicoot? Wasn't that a magical moment, you guys? And guys, how could we forget when Microsoft shat the bed? They're still doing that. However, the biggest moment I remember from this 2010 E3 had to have been when Gabe Newell stepped on stage at the Sony E3 press conference and announced that Portal 2 was coming to consoles. Now, this was huge back then. I feel like as time has gone on, games have really become mostly just a mix of console and PC. Most of my big gamer friends own both, or if not already on PC. But back in the day, there were battle lines drawn in the ground, chat. You were either a snobby master PC race, or you were a dirty, dirty console boy, and it was great. I miss it. So when Gabe Newell stepped onto the Sony conference, it was a moment to take notice. And I did. So after the Sony E3 press conference ended, I brushed off my silver Mac laptop, opened that bad boy out, downloaded Team Fortress 2, Portal 1, and of course, Half-Life 2. From the moment you open up Half-Life 2, there is a recognizable breath of life that Valve has breathed into this game, which is incredibly ironic for the setting and the world Valve built around the story of Half-Life 2. Valve has done an incredible job at breathing life into the world of Half-Life 2, and I think that's done through a caveat of reasons. Now, there's nothing that incredible about the NPCs of Half-Life 2 in today's comparisons, but you gotta take yourselves back to the shoes of someone back in 2004. These guys had full-on little motions that they were going through. They had reactions to you as a player. They watched and follow you with their pupils. That wasn't normal back then. From you seeing them how they react to raids happening on the street, to them grabbing food at line and just walking around the city. It just feels so hopelessly alive. I don't know how else to describe it. The world of Half-Life 2 is just incredibly memorable and well crafted. From the NPCs to the sound design to the artistic design, every inch and quarter of Half-Life 2 is absolutely oozing with atmosphere. But then of course there's also just the art design of this game. Despite being a very bleak and downtrodden game, it's a very beautiful environment when you think about it. As you journey through the game from the starting level on into each level, the sun and the lighting slowly takes into account that time is passing through your journey. We're all very incredibly used to the 24-hour life cycle, the sun slowly going up through there and everything. But there's something far more impactful about Valve taking the time to consider how would the sun look and feel in this setting. How long of time would it realistically have taken Gordon to move from point A to point B? My favorite moment has to be where you fight the helicopter on the boat. A beautiful sunset is just cascading across the sky, and then you all of a sudden have to be doing this. It's just so good! And a lot of the feeling of the atmosphere and immersion can be attributed to the sound designer and composer of the game, Kevin Bailey. Come here, Kevin. Thank you. Mwah. Valve had a very clear desire for realism within their game, and the sound does so much to add to that effect to it. From wood breaking against the walls, to the whistle of wind in a cave, to the quietness of a coastline beach town. Every single detail has been taken into account by Valve, and I struggle to find games that do so much with their sound as Half-Life 2 does. I could go on about the presentation of the game, but I want to move on to another important element of it, the story. When I first played Half-Life 2, I didn't really know the story of it. I had no experience with Half-Life 1 at all, and there weren't 1,000 YouTube videos that explained in deep detail the lore of these games. By the way, to anyone who made those, thank y'all so much. You've made my nights so much better. I've been sleeping so well because of you. Thank you. No, I was experiencing mostly for the gameplay and the feel of the game, and while the story, lore, and factions kind of fell to the wayside for me. But that's why, upon revisit, I had to take so much appreciation in how much detail Valve sprinkles throughout all of their games, and not just in the artistic design, but building the world and the actual story of it as well. Throughout the game, there are so many little moments. There's even a moment where Dr. Breen calls out the absurdity of a video game character in this situation. And he just is like, what are you doing? He's just an MIT graduate. Shoot him!
How could one man have slipped through your force's fingers? Time and time again? How is it possible? This is not some agent provocateur or highly trained assassin we are discussing. Gordon Freeman is a theoretical physicist who had hardly earned the distinction of his Ph.D. at the time of the Black Mesa incident. I have good reason to believe that in the intervening years he was in a state that precluded further development of covert skills. The man you have consistently failed to slow, let alone capture, is by all standards simply that, an ordinary man.
They even implemented the video game aspect of a character within this story. It's so brilliant! So many small hidden environmental storytelling happens in this game. You see packs of human being carried off to Nova Prospect. You see battles that have occurred long before your arrival on the scene. So many story elements that the developers risked being missed by hundreds and thousands of players because they wanted to reward the people who wanted to know more. If you wanted to know more about Half-Life 2's world and the story, you just had to pay attention. And I feel a lot of games really don't understand that concept of show don't tell. Now I could go more into the story, but like I said, there's already thousands of videos out there over the story. You can watch one of those because we want to jump into one last topic of this video, you guys, and that's the gameplay. You know how it goes, chat. You start a video game fighting off your basic thugs and your rats and helping your grandma, and then by the end of the video game, you're fighting the expectations of God and society. Now, Half-Life 2 doesn't exactly have you fighting God, but it does have you feeling like God. Let me explain. The pacing in this game is incredibly well detailed. From every moment, there is a constant escalation of progress. Escalation through the arsenal of Gordon's equipment, escalation of the enemies and their toughness and their variety of moves that they can do and what all they have to offer, to escalation to even every single encounter where you're having simple shootouts at the start of the game, and by the end you're having frantic back and forths with the enemy combine, rounding corners, taking cover, throwing grenades, enemies reacting to you, shooting them, throwing grenades back at you, people blowing up left and right, and oh my god, if you think I'm actually exaggerating, please watch this. And finally, by the end, the game offers my favorite trope in any video game. Developers, if you want to have a memorable ending to your game, don't just have me fight God. Make me God. Video games at their core have usually been about escapism and a power fantasy. And there's very few video game characters that make me feel as badass as Gordon motherfucking Freeman. So, why am I making this video? I think I wanted to make this video because it genuinely felt so nice feeling like that 13-year-old kid who played Half-Life 2 for the first time. That time in my life when video games weren't just a hobby, they were kind of my everything. If you've been paying attention to the games industry the past while, things aren't looking too great. Studios left and right have been experiencing shutdowns and mass layoffs. Darling studios that were beloved 10 to 15 years ago are almost hardly recognizable nowadays. And as the costs of these games rise and executives at top demanding a return on their investment that bleeds into horrible microtransaction ecosystems, we find that games are an entirely different ground than what we thought they were probably going to be. And it's funny because Valve found themselves in a very similar situation 20 years ago. Half-Life 2 cost $40 million. Raised for inflation, that's around $80 to $90 million today. And it almost bankrupted them. We almost didn't have Steam as a hub. Could you imagine? We should be so thankful that Valve was able to survive and that they started Steam. I think the difference between a lot of AAA developers nowadays and Valve back then, even Valve today, is that Valve had a very clear vision and goal of what they wanted Half-Life 2 to be. Half-Life 2 was meant to be a brand new benchmark. It was meant to show where games could take us, how far games have come since their infancy in the 80s, how much the technology can not only just improve graphics, but also the experiences we have with all of these silly little polygons. And that's why Half-Life 2 is so important to me, because it's a reminder of that passion and that drive, and it's still there. And it's not just Valve. There's that passion in so many developers. It's just being held back by greedy wants and capitalistic desires to increase revenue and become the biggest game, when Valve is simply just trying to change the way we think of video games. And that's why I wanted to talk about Half-Life 2. Because it did change video games. We're still talking about it 20 years later. This video is probably incredibly messy. It's probably all over the place. But if you've been sticking around this long, all I can say to end it off with is, if you haven't experienced Half-Life 2, heck, if you haven't played it in a few years, jump back in, because it's still an incredible experience. Valve, thank you, and I can't wait for Half-Life 3. My name is Meditate, and thanks for watching my silly little video.
Oh, you're still here. Well, I might be working on the next video right now, but if you'd like to see more, you can always check me out at one of these many fine locations, such as my Twitch, where I'm often playing video games and having a good quality time with my community. Or on Blue Sky, because fuck that other platform. Until next time, gamers, bye-bye!